Okay, ready?
Yeah.
We're live. Hello, everyone. So welcome back to my Whole and Well Community Chats series. It's been a while, so in case you're new here, my name is Amy C. Willis. I am a sobriety and mindset coach. I predominantly work with women who are interested in seeking sobriety and finding tools and habits that support that and really creating lives that they love. On top of that, I'm a meditation teacher, an EFT practitioner, and I live in Toronto, Canada, and I work with clients globally. So thank you for tuning in to this conversation. I'm super excited to be here. I am chatting with a super rad gal. This is Rhiannon. Hi, Rhiannon.
Hi.
Hello. So Rhiannon is a mom, a certified yoga instructor, a development coach, and a retail manager. Embracing a sober life has enabled her to level up in all areas of her life and become the woman she's always wanted to be. Rhiannon lives in Montreal, Canada with her family, and fun fact, was my first sober client. So it feels, yeah, it feels especially special to have you here today. I'm so grateful that you agreed to do this and that you were open to doing this with me. And I think the world of you, and your story is so inspiring and important. And I know that so many people will find value in what you have to share. So I'm so grateful that you're open to being here and to sharing openly. And it's honestly been such a joy and pleasure to watch your life and your transformation take place. I remember like one of our first calls way back when to where you are now, it's like night and day. And so I'm so thrilled that you're here and that you're going to be sharing parts of that with this community. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we kick it off, I'm just going to do a land acknowledgement. So it's really important to me to acknowledge that I reside on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the. So as a settler, I am deeply grateful for the privilege to live and gather here. And I want to communicate my deep appreciation and reverence to the generations of people who have cared for this land for thousands of years. In particular, in Toronto, I want to acknowledge the ancestral traditional territories of the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit, whose territory I currently live on. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. I recognize and deeply appreciate their historical connection to this place, and I also recognize the contributions of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous people in shaping and strengthening our communities, province, and the country on the whole. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and in particular to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across our country. So as always, thank you very much to the Bebo Mia team for that land acknowledgement. Okay, Rhiannon. To kick things off, I would love to start by hearing a little bit about your story with alcohol and drinking and what your journey to sobriety has looked like.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's so, like you said, it's so wonderful, such a full circle to be here talking to you. Something I never thought I'd be doing, talking so openly, vulnerably, and comfortably about my relationship and journey with alcohol. So, I mean, if we go way back, I think I need to start at just, I was a really nervous kid. I was a really nervous child. Worry was like my default setting for most things. And so as a result, I think this is, my thoughts on everything. My first experiences with alcohol were a bit of a relief for me, from that
Yeah.
feeling of worry, that feeling of always being a little bit anxious. So being a young teenager, my first experience was like, ooh, I like this. I like this feeling. It's a bit of a break. It's a bit of an escape. So that was my initial reaction. And now that I'm looking backwards on it, a recipe for disaster. So what ended up happening was,
Yeah.
for everything I used it, it made me feel more confident. It made me feel more social. All through high school and all through my teens and 20s, it was just what I did before going out, because it's what I thought made me more fun, and it's what I thought made me able to be the person I wanted to be in social settings. Um, and then as my life progressed, and as life has different complications, more complications, kids, divorces, things like that, it was the only thing I knew to um, to relieve stress. It was the only thing that I kept going back to. Oh, I've had a rough day. I'm going to pour a glass of wine. Oh, it's a celebration. I'm going to pour a glass of wine. So just going back and back and back and back, it was just this pathway in my brain, the only pathway in my brain that I had created to deal with tough situations and happy situations, all situations. And so, I mean, the journey to sobriety, getting there, I mean, I think I really started looking at it. I really started looking at it. I mean, I really, really started looking at it after my 40th birthday, when I was just like, okay, the next decade of my life, if I don't change anything, is going to be exactly the same. So it wasn't necessarily bad, but it wasn't great. It wasn't great by any means. And if I continued that way, there was no space in my life for change. So I knew I had just enough energy to do the things that I absolutely had to get done every day. But I didn't have any more. I didn't have anything to anything to take on more. So I really did want that change. And I was starting to think things like, oh, everyone must, have days where they wake up hungover. Everyone must have days where they don't remember parts of the night before. Yeah, that must be normal, right? I'm starting to think maybe that's not normal, and maybe that's not the normal I want in my life anyways. So, and then I found you. Thank goodness.
Yeah, so many like juicy little nuggets in there, just in terms of the piece around like the first time you had booze, you were like, sweet relief from what I imagine is like the incessant worry, like thoughts happening and feeling anxious. Oh, what can give me this little pocket of time where I don't have to be in that space? And so appealing, and I think are things that people grasp, right? Because we get that relief that we're so desperately seeking, but in that moment we don't necessarily realize like what's coming later on down the road, right? So we get that relief, but then we're like 3, 4, 5, 6 hours later the next day, our anxiety is through the roof. We feel probably way worse in terms of mood because alcohol is a depressant. But for whatever reasons, and maybe it's because of the time delay, we just remember like the instant relief, right? We remember that we get that pause and we get to press pause on those intense feelings, but we don't necessarily remember all the other stuff that's on the other side. So I totally like that, really resonates with me very deeply. Yeah, I guess then my next question for you is, so what took you from sort of being in a place of reflection and, recognizing like, okay, maybe this isn't as great as it can be. Maybe instead of just surviving, I can thrive. What took you from recognizing that you maybe wanted more to actually taking a step towards creating that change in your life?
I think I couldn't do it anymore. Like just what you were saying, those moments of waking up at 3 a.m. with this like doom, this feeling of, the anxiety was way worse than it had been the night before. Like anything I
Yeah.
had escaped from momentarily was tenfold. And I do also, probably something I should say, I have struggled with, with depression and been medicated for depression on and off. And I started finally accepting, like, I wonder what it would be like if I wasn't putting
Yeah.
medicines in my body. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't.
Yeah.
And like I said before, I could maybe go another decade the same. I think I was starting to realize that maybe it wasn't sustainable, that maybe the next decade, um,
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be as easy, or not that it was easy, but
Yeah.
things were starting not to work. Things that previously worked were starting really not to work. And I was starting to really notice that they weren't working. So
Yeah.
I knew I couldn't do it alone. I had tried to do it alone. And habits are strong. Habits are like, they just, I didn't know any other
Yeah.
way. And I didn't know what I needed. And I do have a strong belief in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard about you, and I think in my life, I was just like, I need a partner. I need someone to like hold my hand through this
Yeah.
and help me believe that another way is possible as well. Help show
Mm-hmm.
me the way, but help me also believe that the other way is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I recently heard a statistic, and I think like part of what you're talking about is accountability, right? Because like for whatever reason, we are like much more quick to break promises to ourselves than we are to other people. Um, and I think that's why, like in a coaching dynamic or, in other dynamics, personal relationships, whatever, accountability can be so helpful. Like I recently read something that said, like, accountability and following through on the thing you said you were going to do happens, I don't know, like 85 to 90% of the time when you're actually in an accountability partnership with people. Um, and what I also find with coaching is that by the end of, the time that I work with clients, they have also developed that muscle of like following through on their own, which I think is also really valuable, and like honoring their own needs and honoring that follow through, which I think is like really, really helpful. Okay, awesome. Okay, so now that you've been sober for a little bit,
Mhm.
which is like so rad. So happy for you. um, what feels possible for you now that you're sober that maybe didn't feel possible before?
Oh my gosh, so much, so much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, regular everyday things feel possible, but in a big scheme of things, alignment feels possible. So many of my parts of my life felt out of alignment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a development coach. I teach yoga. Like those things didn't seem to, like, how I was living my life and the way I was teaching people to live their life didn't feel aligned. And that alignment is possible now, which is the best feeling. It is
Mm-hmm.
an amazing feeling. Um, and like self-love and self-trust is possible now, something I always wanted, but there was
Yeah.
a deep shame. There was
Mm-hmm.
a lack of trust in myself, like you said, like that follow through, like trusting that I could follow through on things,
Yeah.
which is possible now. Not only possible, but I feel it. It's
Yeah.
every day. And
Yeah.
that is so incredible. And happiness. And also a sense of pride, a sense of
Yeah.
being proud of something, proud of myself.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't possible before.
Yeah. 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 And when I like what stands out for me in that, I mean, a lot of things and a lot of like really big things. And I think what you're pointing to is like when you said you feel it, like an embodiment of that self-love, an embodiment of that trust that you've cultivated in yourself, and then also demonstrated to yourself over and over and over in the choices that you're making and the steps that you're taking. um but what like I wanted to circle back to was the shame piece. Like shame is, I don't know about you, but it feels like one of the hardest, heaviest emotions to carry. And I think when you're in it, it feels like a dark tunnel that you can't see the end, the light at the end of. And it gets in the way of trusting yourself and loving yourself unconditionally. And yeah, I think there can be so much shame in whether it's addiction that we're struggling with or just a relationship of dependence to alcohol or other drugs. That shame can be really, really powerful. And yeah, I think healing that and working our way through that makes so many other things more possible.
This wouldn't be possible. Like
Yeah.
this conversation, speaking my truth, being honest about things wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah.
That's so freeing, to not feel like you have a secret, to not feel like there's part of me I'm not sharing, to be completely authentic, and unashamed by it. And just,
Yeah.
I don't feel like there was anything wrong with me. I feel like there's, we could talk more about that, but a lack of information, lack of tools that are taught in schools to deal with sobriety and the other things that kids face. And instead of feeling shameful about it, I feel empowered to speak about it and empowered to help my own children, when I see them anxious, and give them the tools and different ways to cope.
Yep, totally, totally. And yeah, I also just want to comment, like, you being here and people outside of you and I don't have the context that we have. Like if I had imagined when we first started working together that we would be in this conversation that would be shared publicly, I probably wouldn't have guessed that you would want to do it.
Oh my gosh, it would have been a hell no. I
Yeah.
remember saying to you, having, certain words I was comfortable using, even in our coaching scenarios, like I'm not comfortable saying, sobriety or recovery. I don't think I'm comfortable with this. I had these little parameters that made me feel, I don't know what it made me feel, but I just wasn't comfortable going. And now, I don't know. It's just so nice. It is so freeing to be able to use those words, to be able to just speak my truth. I know I said it before, but it just feels like comfortable talking about myself.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I also think I like the piece that you said about like, there is nothing wrong with you, right? There's never been anything wrong with you. You're not broken. You've never been broken. You were responding to human experiences and challenges with what you had available to you, right? And what you had available to you, and this is, me as well, was like easy access to booze. And we live in a normative alcohol culture where we are told that alcohol does all these things for us and that it makes us social and funny and awesome and sexy and all the things. And it's this wildly addictive poison that if we don't like handle our booze well, we are the problem, right? And I think there's a lot of unlearning in terms of our beliefs and in terms of what we believe about ourselves and our capacity when we start to turn into a sober journey, because those messages come at us from all angles and they become so ingrained. And also, I think like we're living in a patriarchal, white supremacist, capitalist world that benefits from us being out of it and subdued and not paying attention to all the different ways that we're being like oppressed and pushed down. And so I think all of those things are also happening all around us at any given moment. And so I love that you said the piece about like, this is actually not a reflection of me, but instead like you're responding to the world you're living in and to like what is happening for you. And I think that that's really powerful and an important distinction to make, because so many people first go to themselves as like the people to blame. And that's like not helpful. And I think for so many reasons that fuels the shame,
Oh, absolutely.
keeps stuck.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
like
Ah,
when I was,
okay.
when I was, when that shame was there, when I was embarrassed to speak about things, like it was as soon as I was
Yeah.
able to flip that narrative and say, no, I made a powerful choice for myself, then I was able to start shifting to feeling proud and feeling, and not the shame
Yeah.
didn't disappear when I started to shift that narrative.
So you might have already touched on some of these pieces in the previous question about what feels possible for you now, but I would love to just kind of look at some of the benefits of sobriety and what those benefits have looked like in your life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many benefits. I mean, better sleep for sure. Sleep has
Yep.
always been a thing for me. Rest, I mean, deeper sleep, better rest. That's been unbelievable. More energy, more patience. The patience
Mm-hmm.
I have for my kids, the patience I have at work, the, it's unbelievable. I have more patience than I ever thought I actually had. Um,
Mm-hmm.
better sex, can we say that? Better
We
sex.
can totally say that.
Come on. Like things that I was worried about um, doing sober are actually way better. Um,
Yeah.
More enjoyment in general, I have to say,
Yep.
just more enjoyment. Things aren't numb, they're not dulled. Um,
Yeah.
that I remember talking to you about being nervous going to the first concert, my first concert sober. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I don't know if it's going to be fun. Everyone's going to be drinking and I'm not. And I danced, I had energy. With I actually enjoyed it more than I've ever enjoyed a concert in my adult life. So
Yeah.
things like that, conversations, like just
Mm-hmm.
simple conversations. So going to those
Mm-hmm.
parties that I was nervous about going to, and when we did work together, it was leading up to summer. There was all sorts of parties planned and all sorts of vacations planned. I was like, I'm nervous about this. And then when I was actually in them, I just enjoyed everything so much more.
Yeah. 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 And I think it's interesting, right? Because like a lot of I think our struggles when we're considering sobriety is that we have these like deep-seated beliefs about the role that alcohol plays in our lives. So like it makes us more social, it makes everything more fun, it makes me funnier, it makes it easier for me to connect to people. And then when you actually, so when you think that you're moving out in the Asian, then you also immediately think all those things will be gone or they will be harder. And then what's interesting, and I find this with pretty much everyone that I work with, it's like actually none of those things were true to begin with. And at the end of the day, you get to decide how connected or engaged you want to be in a conversation you're with. You're the one who creates and delivers the jokes. You're the one who gets to decide what fun looks like and if you want to have fun at that thing that you're going to. And so I think it's really helpful, one, to like challenge some of those beliefs that we've held on to for such a long time. And then two, actually go out and do it with an open mind and like see what happens, you know?
Totally.
And our brains are so powerful. Because I mean, if you decide that going to your first concert, for example, is going to be a miserable dumpster fire, then I bet you're going to have a miserable dumpster fire time. And if you decide that it's going to be the most fun you've had all week or all month or all year, or it's going to be an incredible experience, then that will also be true. And I think again, it's like we get to decide. We get to decide what experiences we want to have and how we want to show up to them.
100%.
Mm-hmm. And definitely sober sex is way better. I mean,
Tons.
everything you've mentioned is way better because we're actually present
Yes.
and in the moment and actually creating genuine connection with people. And we say what we want to say and we remember those conversations or experiences the next day. And all of that, I think, is not to be undervalued because that's like the good stuff.
100%.
Yeah. Um, okay. So I'm curious, as a mom, um, mommy wine culture is everywhere. I am not a mom, but it gets me hot under the collar all the time. So I would love to know, just like, what are your thoughts or comments on it in relationship to like parenting and booze and like, I don't know, even maybe what your experiences were like while you were drinking versus like how you view that type of messaging now. Just anything around mommy wine culture. I'd love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I think two things come up for me with that. I feel my thoughts are it's dangerous, and my
Yeah,
thoughts are it's really sad. So
yeah,
the dangers I'll speak to first. I mean, becoming a parent has a multitude of stresses for men and women. And for women,
yeah,
there's so many things that we go through, and so many of these stresses and are so, well, they're very, very real. And
yeah.
the what we need is education and connection. And the
Mm-hmm,
wine culture creates a false sense of connection. It creates
mm-hmm.
a camaraderie around the struggles, but there's no solutions being created. And for me,
Yep.
that was a big part of my descent was, I'm home. I had a career that had me working way more than 40 hours for a very long time. And then I was a home
Yeah.
alone, struggling with so many things that come after having a baby. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, drinking in those situations is not a good idea. It makes you feel better temporarily.
Yeah.
The jokes make us bond together, and we're not actually getting the help we need or voicing the real things that are happening. We're joking about
Yeah.
things that are happening, and those
Yeah.
jokes have real truth underneath that actually need real solutions. So
Yeah.
that's the danger part.
Yeah.
And then the sad part is, I did take, of course, I took part in it for so many years, and
Yeah.
it did fill a void that I had, and I worry about any sort of narrative that created in the heads of my kids. Like
Yeah.
I really do, and I hope
Mhm.
we talk so openly now. My kids are 14, 12, almost 12 and 7, and the 7-year-old doesn't remember a lot, but the older ones definitely do. And the last thing in the world I would ever want them to think is that I need an escape from them. They're the best things that ever happened to me, you know.
Yeah.
And I would never want them to think that I regret anything or that them being in existence makes my life harder. I
Yeah.
I make my life harder. My inability to deal with my things made my life harder. My lack of looking for other options and other alternatives to stress management made
Mhm.
my life harder, not them. So those are my thoughts.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think those are some really great ones. And I think you touched on like a lot of key points. Especially like a couple things really stand out for me. Like, one is the message that we want to give to our kids. I need to consume copious amounts of poison to deal with you in my life. Like,
That hits me like a knife in my heart.
yeah, yeah, totally. And like that's what the message is every time, you know, like when grocery stores think that they're doing like cheeky marketing when they're like back to school supplies and it's like a display of wine, you know. All of that I think is part of normative alcohol culture and I agree with you. It's sad and it's like devastating for kids, I think, if they actually like fully understood what that messaging was saying. um, and I think the piece that you were speaking to around like a false sense of connection and all of it, and the fact that like we need real solutions, like moms in particular, and yes, like both parents have instructors and all of that. I feel like, you know, for many years, or since I feel like the brunt of child rearing and taking care of the house and all of it is on women largely. And instead of like structural solutions that provide support and community and relief, we're expected, not me because I don't have kids, but women are expected to just like adapt and take it all on and do it all the time, while also having a full-time job and caring for the house and being an awesome partner and like all the things, right? And so it's just like, I think it goes back to that relief piece and that seeking of like connection and community. But yeah, like booze is never going to be a solution to the structures that women and moms face all the time.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is going to be your second sober holiday.
Yes.
So I would thick of holidays. We're getting so close. I would love any tips that you might want to offer for those who might be going into holidays sober for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, what a different holiday we are in.
Mm-hmm.
We were, and you know what? The tips are very much the same, whether we are doing it the way we're doing it in 2020, or whether we are doing it going to parties or whatever. So, I mean, my two biggest tips, I think, would be plan fun drinks. I really like last year brought my drinks to parties.
Yep.
This year I plan to just have things available, have my bubbly water available, have whatever feels fun for you, have them available.
Yep.
And you know, I last year just going into holiday, not expecting people to have things that might work for you, you know.
Right.
That was big for me, is just taking personal responsibility on the fact that I am not drinking alcohol, and most times that is what is served, and therefore I'm going to bring my own and I'm going to have fun. And you spoke to mindset as well, and just like
Mm-hmm.
picturing the end result that you want to have, picturing the fun, picturing the cozy, picturing the comfort, whatever it's going to be like this year.
Yep.
That is definitely a big one, is
Yep.
imagining the best possible outcome.
Mm.
And what was the other one for me? I mean, if we were gathering, and last year when we are gathering again,
Mm-hmm.
for me, having an exit strategy was important.
Yes,
Just having
definitely.
a plan, and when it got to us, and not feeling bad if I'm the first one to go. You
Yeah.
know, I went to a party last year where they were like, everyone gave a prize for the first one to go. You know, it was like this little, like, whatever, what do you call it? One of those like, oh, kind of like shaming the person for being the first one to leave. And
Right.
I was fully okay that I was the first one to
Yeah. Yep.
fully okay.
Yep.
And I had planned, what I was going to say and what was going to happen. And I left and I was in bed with my book, and I woke up the next morning feeling fabulous. So,
Yeah.
oh, and I have one more. I said two, and here I am on my fourth one. Be gentle with yourself. That too.
Yeah.
Just the self-care, the loving yourself up, and knowing that if you're going into a sober holiday, you're doing a big thing, and you're doing something
Yeah.
that really goes against it, like you were saying, a very normative culture, and recognizing yourself. And you did a great job every week asking me something that I would celebrate about the week, what I could celebrate about myself, which
Yep.
wasn't easy.
Yeah.
So important to
Yep.
celebrate yourself and celebrate those small victories.
Yep. Totally. Yes, I agree. And I think, yeah, like, and you pointed to so many things within this and actually said it, but I think just like planning ahead, right? I think we're doing something differently than what we normally do. So why would we expect that going into it the way we've always gone into it before would give us the outcome that we want? So yeah, like having some fun drinks, having an exit strategy. Also, like depending on your relationship with the person hosting, I think it's totally reasonable to like loop them in if you feel good, right? To be like, hey, so I'm swinging by. I may have to leave early. If you want to tell them that you're not drinking right now, or not even get into that, like all of that is cool, but it's totally fine to like give people the heads up, right? So it's not like a surprise when the time comes, or like loop in the person you're going out with or celebrating with or whatever, and just let them know, like, hey, I might want to ditch the party early and, whatever, or get a good night's sleep. I think all of those things, just like thinking ahead and also like deciding the energy you want to bring to it and the fun you want to bring to it, and like being conscious of the fact that you get to create the experience you're about to have, and you get to decide if you want it to be a really fun night or if you want it to be a huge bummer. Basically.
And you know what was mind blowing to me is that I actually get to decide if I even want to go. It
Yeah.
was never an option for me before. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool to be able to put myself first and be like, why do I go to things?
Yeah.
Anything. Why am I going? Do I want to go? Is this
Yeah.
adding to my life?
Yeah.
We don't have to do anything. That was a really big story I lived into for a long time, is like living my
Yeah.
life, I have to, instead of I
Yeah.
want to or I get to.
Yeah.
And the things I get to do now, I'm so happy to go. And
Totally.
there's certain things that I politely decline, and I'm
Yeah.
thrilled to be able to have that boundary clear in my head now.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Boundaries are my fave. I love it. Oh, so good. Okay. Final maybe question. What would you say to someone who is listening who might be thinking differently or maybe critically about their relationship to drinking?
I would just say, go for it. You have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing to lose. Um, I would say you set the rules, you set the pace, you set the tone. You decide. There's nothing wrong with you. You could continue exactly the way you're living, or make another choice.
Mhm.
I would. That's really all. There's just nothing to lose. Some
Yeah.
the hesitation that I felt going in. Yeah, that's if I would have just known that I had everything to gain and nothing to lose. Yeah, that's all I would have wanted to tell myself too. I think I'm freezing again.
I think I'm still here and see you.
Oh, good.
Yeah. um, yeah, I had a similar experience. I thought that no longer having booze in my life meant that I would lose everything, because I had gotten to a place where my drinking was tied up in everything in my life. And only through my experiences in sobriety have I learned not only what a privilege sobriety is, but stepping away from booze actually opened up more possibility and more abundance and opportunity in my life than I ever could have imagined. And all the incredible things that are in my life now are a result of being sober. And I am madly in love with my life. And my life would not look this way. I would have given up so much if I had kept drinking. And so I think that that's just so helpful, like in terms of perspective, because it can seem like you're losing so much, but actually you're gaining more than you ever could have imagined.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think I was so afraid of losing my identity. My identity was so wrapped up in alcohol. My friends, my alcohol actually seems like a friend. I definitely it did fill a void of a friend at times, and I was so afraid to lose that. And yeah, just like you said, I gained so much. I gained
Yeah.
so much, and I love my life. I truly love my life. I love the
Yeah.
energy I have. I love how much I've been able to learn over the past almost 2 years. Like I
Mhm.
said at the beginning, like I want I wanted my life to grow. I wanted to see, so at 40, I wanted to see the next 40 years of my life as like continuing to go up rather than just like
Yeah.
maintaining or going down. I wanted
Yeah.
my health to improve, my fitness to improve. I wanted my brain to grow. I wanted to learn new things. I wanted to learn new skills and start a business. And I wanted
Mhm.
all these things that I never would have been able to do if I had kept drinking.
Yeah.
And now I see them all starting to manifest. I see them all happen because I have
Yeah.
the energy. I have this time. I always had this relationship to time where there was never enough. And now I
Mhm.
feel like I have so much time. And
Yeah.
time is on my side. I have time for everything I love and
Yeah.
everything I want to do. And
Yeah.
I do see my life going like on an upward spiral for the first time in very many years. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Ah.
thank you. This is so, it's so nice to be able to thank you virtually like this in a conversation. I know I text you from time to time when I have different experiences that just, it makes me emotional. Some of the experiences I have with my kids, the conversations and whatever.
Mhm.
And it working with you was such a pleasure. It was so accessible. It was so safe. And I was surprised how little we talked about alcohol. There was so many other things we discussed that made this
Yeah.
work for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because, like, for a lot of us, I think, I mean, alcohol certainly becomes a gigantic problem, but it's also a symptom of other stuff for a lot of us, right? So it could be like, I'm, supporting my anxious self by drinking, or I'm trying to de-stress or relax because I don't have these other methods of supporting myself in that way. It could be because we're deeply uncomfortable with the skin that we're in, and so we just need to escape that. And it could be that, we have non-existent boundaries and we live into our people pleasing tendencies, right? Like, there are a whole slew of different things that we look to alcohol to solve for us, even though we know that doesn't do it. But yeah, so it's yeah, we definitely spend a lot of time not talking about booze and actually, like, getting to that place, like you said earlier, of alignment, of like figuring out what's actually most important to you and taking steps to bring you closer to alignment so that your inside life matches your outside life and vice versa. Yeah. Oh, so good. So good. And also, it was such a pleasure working with you. And I'm so grateful for you in particular because you took the leap of faith with me and you trusted me to support you in this really important journey. And that is, like, not something I take lightly. It's like such an honor and privilege this, and I feel like, I was a very new coach at the time, and you trusted that I could support you with this, and, like, it was, literally a huge, like, starting point and really changed the trajectory of my coaching practice and my life in working with you. So thank you for that, because that's huge. Oh,
So
so
much,
good.
so much fun.
Yeah. Totally. I'm like, we could just go on this, like, love circle
Oh,
fest for like another hour.
yeah.
um, Anything else before we close? Any final thoughts you want to share?
I just think again for anyone listening that this journey can be a lot of fun. So
Mm,
I I didn't think it could be, and I'm still, almost 2 years later, discovering things and having these aha moments, and um, it really can be a lot of fun. It's scary to take the leap, and it's scary to admit
yeah.
things to yourself and others, but so much magic opens up when you can be honest
Hmm.
and true to yourself. So
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, I couldn't agree more. So perfect. Well, thank you again for being here and for sharing, parts of yourself so openly and generously with like me and with whoever ends up watching this. And like I said before, I think, your story is so interesting and also so relatable. And I feel like you will inspire a lot of people with your truth and just opting to show up and actually share it and live into it. It's powerful, it's inspiring, and I know it will have an impact on others.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to end the recording